Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are going to just wait another minute or two to let everyone else file in for the webinar, but we will get started in about a minute. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We will be getting started. We do see a couple more people signing into the webinar, so we'll just give them a few more minutes. But while we're waiting, just wanted to introduce myself. I am Melissa. I am the Director of Marketing at DipJar. We are hosting this webinar. We're so thrilled to have Nathan from NextAfter joining us today as we're entering probably the final 4 weeks big push of fundraising for all of you nonprofits, as we know. If you haven't heard about DipJar, we offer a really cool, or at least what I like to say is a very cool fundraising device. It's great for in-person events. If you're partnering with local businesses, put it on the counter, ask for donations. It makes a really fun cha-ching sound when the donor donates, lights up, makes noises, super engaging. But at this time, we're not going to focus on selling you a dip jar. We'd like to just talk about how you can maximize your online fundraising during the last week of the year. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Nathan from NextAfter. And Nathan, if you just want to give everyone a little tidbit about yourself and introduce NextAfter, then we can get started.
Sure. Yeah, as Melissa said, my name is Nathan. I work at NextAfter, and it is my basically daily duties I run marketing here at NextAfter, but most of that work is really missional minded, where we're trying to decode what works in giving and in generosity. And then it's my job and my privilege, honestly, to take these learnings and try to equip you and as many other fundraisers and nonprofit marketers and communicators, equip as many of you as possible as I can with what we're learning works to grow giving and grow generosity. So grateful to be with you today. Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Well, I have been talking about year end for what seems like forever. In fact, I've at least been talking about it since September. In September was our what we call our NeoSummit, the Nonprofit Innovation and Optimization Summit, which is like a conference where you go and you sit in a room full of people and you listen to a bunch of super smart people talk to you from stage and give you wonderful ideas as to how to grow giving, how to grow your results as a nonprofit. If you haven't had the chance to actually sit in a room with other human beings since the start of COVID, if you're able to, I would highly recommend it, because it was honestly transformational and just emotional, and in some cases overwhelming to actually be with real human beings again. But it's a wonderful event where you hear from some incredibly smart people. You get to network with some incredible people as well, working for great causes, have a ton of fun doing it. There are actually Oompa Loompas there, but it's this great event where we're all centered around this idea of how do we grow giving and grow generosity together. And so I was privileged enough to be able to speak at this event talking about how do you build a year-end fundraising campaign in an effective way to tell your story and share your value proposition over the course of the entire year-end season without just asking for money over and over and over and over and over. Because we know if we just send appeal after appeal after appeal, you're probably going to burn out your email file. But I've actually been thinking about year-end for much longer than just since September, because we conducted a new research study with our friends at Virtuous called the State of Year-End Multi-Channel Fundraising. And so we were capturing data back during year-end 2020, and even before that, making sure we had all of our lists organized and everything like that. So year-end has basically been constantly on my brain for quite a long time. And what's interesting in this study, one of the first things we set out to understand is looking at the organizations that we get to work with at NextAfter. And we're wondering how much revenue actually comes in during the year-end window. And we would define the year-end window as November 15th through the end of the year, so basically a 45-day period. And what we have found through the organizations that we work with is that 35% of online revenue for the year comes in during that year-end window, which is quite a lot of revenue at stake. But I think sometimes there's a misconception about what year-end really is and when does revenue come in and what days are really most important. But we can look at the data and we can look at the metrics, we can look at when revenue comes in to figure out where should we prioritize our efforts. Because commonly as fundraisers, we get really excited about Giving Tuesday. And Giving Tuesday is wonderful. Let me start there. Giving Tuesday is wonderful. It is a rapidly growing, not just giving day, but also a movement. There's some cool things going on at the Giving Tuesday offices to try to grow this movement of giving, and we love that. There's also some interesting data to suggest that Giving Tuesday can be quite effective for acquiring new donors. But during the year-end season, what you are most likely focused on, what most fundraisers are focused on, is not necessarily just getting new donors, but how do I bring in a significant amount of revenue that's actually going to fuel the work that we get to do during the next year. And as we break down the revenue, the picture becomes pretty clear. We're 4.6% of year-end revenue, online year-end revenue, comes in on Giving Tuesday. So Giving Tuesday just happened a week ago. But if we compare that to December 31st, the last day of the year, 253% more revenue is at stake on December 31st, the last day of the year, compared to Giving Tuesday. And then if you zoom back a week and you look at the final last week of the year, 734% more revenue is at stake during the last week of the year compared to Giving Tuesday. So if you had an incredible Giving Tuesday, this is incredible news for you because you just brought in a lot of revenue and a lot of donors, and there's 734% more revenue left for you just in that last week of the year. If you had a terrible Giving Tuesday, or maybe you chose not to participate for one reason or another, again, there's great news for you. There is so much more at stake. We have only just started and dipped our toes into the year-end season. What's interesting is we're trying to study what organizations are doing to try and grow giving. Here's what we found. In 2020, 20% of organizations sent mail to their current donors. So actually mail in the mailbox. This isn't email. This green column is actually like direct mail. 20% of organizations sent mail to their donors during the week of Giving Tuesday, which obviously isn't great. That means 80% sent nothing in the mail to their donors during this high urgency giving day and during that whole week as well. And if we look at online, we look at emails being sent, the numbers are a little bit better. 57% of organizations at least sent an email during the week of Giving Tuesday. So obviously just looking at these two numbers, there's a lot of room for growth in terms of just pure participation. But what's interesting, and the reason we tried to pull these numbers and understand how people are communicating on Giving Tuesday and during that week, is so we can compare to the last week of the year and see are organizations getting their communication plans in the right priority. And here's what we found as we compare to the last week of the year. There's almost no change in the amount of organizations that are prioritizing Giving Tuesday versus the last week of the year. The numbers are about the same in terms of the communication being sent, which means, number one, there's a lot of room for improvement to communicate and actually show up for our donors during this year-end season, but also we need to start to get things in the right priority, understanding how much is at stake during the last week of the year. And at this point, you're here, you're on this webinar today because you know that there's something about the last week of the year and you're probably wondering, what can I do to maximize my chances of bringing in significant revenue in order to fuel my cause and fuel the impact of our organization during the next year? And so we're going to look really at three things. We're going to spend some time looking at your website and what are some proven tactics that you can use on your website to grow giving. Number two, we're going to look at emails. What emails can you and should you send during the last week of the year in order to increase revenue and generosity? And then third, what should you do on your donation page? How can you structure your donation page, or maybe make some small tweaks here and there in order to increase conversion rates and increase donations during the last week of the year? And before we dive in, I do want to give a bit of a caveat here. We're going to look at some examples today that are only most effective during a high urgency campaign, and specifically during this last week of the year season. There are some tactics in here that you may be tempted to try to pull out and go stick in the middle of July or the middle of August, or like a quote unquote normal time of the year, and they might not be as effective as they are during a high urgency campaign. The motivations of people change as you get close to this natural tax deadline. Keep in mind, the tax deadline is not the reason to give to you, because any nonprofit can say, there's a tax deadline, you should give. We have to communicate why they might give to you specifically, what's the impact they can make. But there is a natural motivation and a natural sense of urgency when you get to the end of the year. And so these tactics are going to try to tap into and dial into that natural motivation and that natural sense of urgency. So let's get started, and let's look at some tactics that you can implement on your website in order to grow giving. The common thread here as we look at your website, the main concept that we want to make sure we use tactics to sort of uphold and bolster is that we want to make it easier for people to find where to give. Especially when motivation is high, we don't want to do things that are slowing people down or making it difficult for them to find our donation page. We want to make this process as easy as possible for them to find where to give. And here's what we can do. So this is just like a sort of a mock-up template of what your homepage might look like. Maybe your homepage looks exactly like this, obviously with some images and colors and all of that stuff. Maybe it looks something like this. It's just sort of a mock-up template for you to show you there's a few different things you can do on any given page to draw attention to the opportunity to give. Here's a bunch of tools that you can actually use. Number one, you can make your donate button stand out. If you even have one, you should probably have one in your navigation. You can use things like sticky bars that literally just stick to the top of the page until somebody might close out of it, with just like a little reminder note and things like that. It's a form of on-site advertising. You may have some ads that are baked into your page. Maybe they look like ads, maybe they look more like native content. You may have pop-ups, you may have slide out banners. There's all these different tools you can use on a given page on your website to draw someone's attention to a call to action. So we're going to look at a bunch of these different tactics and see some ways that you might use them during this season, as well as improve them and lead to greater results. So we're going to start with the navigation. And ultimately, at the base of everything, you need to give people an option in your navigation to donate. That's one of the most critical calls to action, obviously during the season, but really throughout the year, of people that are coming to your website. We ultimately would love more people to donate, so we need to make it clear that they can give. But how do you do that? Here's an interesting experiment. So at NextAfter, we're trying to decode what works to grow giving and grow generosity. We are running lots of A/B tests where we're trying to test a tactic and prove using data and analytics and statistics what's actually going to work to lead towards greater giving. And so we're going to look at a bunch of experiments today, and we're going to start with this one. In the version A, or the original, the control at the top, you see a few things going on in the navigation of this website. You see these three little blue links in the middle, and then down below, you've got this longer navigation bar. And I want to give you a moment and see if you can actually find where the donate link is. Take a look at the original. Can you find where the donate link is? All right, I'll show you. I'll highlight it for you here. There it is. It's right there in the middle of the navigation. But to actually get there, as we typically read left to right and top to bottom, you're probably looking at those first three links at the top in blue, 1, 2, 3, and then you're reading left to right in the navigation to see like home, answers, about, Jamaica, events, and you've read like 10 different things before you actually get to the donate link. And even then, it's equally weighted with basically everything else in the navigation. So what this organization wondered is, can we just draw attention to the opportunity to give a gift and make a donation. So that's what you see in the treatment below, is they've removed those 3 little links from the middle. They've moved them up to this like tertiary search bar at the top, so it's out of the main eye path. They've made this large call to action button that really jumps out of the page. It says, make my gift. And by making it abundantly clear where to go to give a donation, well, here's what they saw. A 74% increase in donations and a 133% increase in average gift size. This is very simple. This is something that you can likely do probably today. Even if it's not adding a new button, maybe it's just changing the color of the text in your navigation bar to make it abundantly clear when someone comes to your page, their eye sees the donate link and they know where to go. When motivation is high, oftentimes we just need to make the path clear to get to the page to give. Here's one more example that's maybe even a little simpler. And this wasn't a year-end specific experiment. This actually is effective throughout the year as well, not just during year end. So in the control in version A, I'll give you a second to kind of squint and see where's the donate link. Oh, it's on the far right of the navigation. Like you can find it if you're really set on it. But what if we actually made it more visible? And so what they did was they called their donate link in their navigation out in this contrasting color. It now has a greater weight to it than the rest of the items in the navigation. Your eye is drawn to it. You understand it's probably something valuable. It's a valuable action to take. You can see it right here. And just by turning this little link into a tiny little button, by changing the background color, that's really all that changed here. It led to a 190% increase in conversions, which is quite remarkable. So this is a very simple test that you can run. It's a very simple change that you can make on your website that can actually lead to some pretty transformational results. So make it abundantly clear and make it incredibly easy for someone to see your donate button in your navigation. Let's move on. Let's talk about homepage ads. As you can tell, we're being pretty tactical today. We're not going to spend a ton of time on the theory. We're going to give you a lot of quick tips and a lot of quick tactics you can use to grow giving, because I think that's what's most effective at this point, as we just have a few short weeks left until the end of the year. Let's look at the homepage, at homepage ads. Here's one example of some sort of ad you might actually add on your page. This is a real ad that a real organization has used on their homepage. It says, double your gift, help parents with their toughest challenges, call to action button, find out more. And I don't have an experiment for this one. We'll look at an experiment in a moment around using your homepage. But what I want to show you with this is just to highlight when is it most effective to use something like a homepage banner in order to increase giving. So this organization ran this homepage banner on their website for essentially the whole year-end season, at least the month of December. And what they saw in this initial time frame, so you can see on your screen from December 6th through the 13th, this is a few years ago, but still interesting experiment. In this initial time span, they saw a 1.1% conversion rate. So basically 1% of people coming to the homepage, saw this banner, actually clicked through and gave a gift, which quite honestly is a pretty good conversion rate, again, because there's high motivation during the season. But as it got closer to the end of the year, you look at this is like the second to last week of the year, basically, you saw the conversion rate jump up from a 1.1% to a 4.6%. So now 4.6% of people coming to this page actually clicked through and gave a gift. So these types of banners, these types of ads on your pages are going to be most effective as you get closer to this deadline. As urgency continues to rise, motivation is higher, and then these banners are actually more effective as you get closer to the deadline. Here's an experiment related to using your homepage and your homepage content. This organization had a nice, branded year-end campaign. It says, this Christmas, change a life, you can shop now. But some of the context around shopping now may have been missing. At least I thought there was room for improvement. Now, this organization does a lot of like international relief type of work, and you can, when you click the shop now button, you can actually go into basically a shopping cart style tool where you can buy a gift, something like a goat, which would actually make a tremendous economic impact on a family in need in this community that you see featured in the image. But none of that context was really made clear as to what am I shopping for? How does it actually impact someone? How does it change a life? None of that context was apparent on the page. They're using their homepage to draw attention to an opportunity to give, but it wasn't super clear what the impact could be. And so here's what they tested. They got rid of just their like branded designed tagline, and they added some value proposition copy right here in the context of the homepage. They're not waiting till you get to a donation page, not waiting till you get into the shopping cart experience to explain the impact of a gift. They're doing it right here on the homepage. You can change a life with a gift this Christmas. Give a gift that can meet a critical need of a child or family living in poverty. When a family receives a goat, education, water, or some other tangible solution, their lives are changed for years to come. Now the call to action says change a life by giving a gift. And they put all that right on the homepage. Some of us don't even have that much copy on our donation page. Now they're putting it right on the homepage, and it led to a 35% increase in donations. So I would highly encourage you to use prime real estate on your homepage to increase traffic to your donation page. And don't be afraid to put some value proposition copy and use a significant chunk of that page in order to show people the impact they can make during this season. Let's look at a couple different types of pop-ups. The first one I want to look at is a timed pop-up. Now, you probably have your own opinion about pop-ups. I'm sure you go to sites that are just covered in them, and it's really frustrating, and you probably hit the back button or the X as fast as you can to get out of there. There are bad pop-ups out in the world and across the internet. But there's also a way that you can use them in an effective way and in a meaningful way that can lead to significant value for you, as well as giving a donor the opportunity to make an impact. So one of these examples is a timed pop-up, and I want to show you an experiment as to how this might be effective. Now, in this case, after you spend a certain amount of time on the page, this pop-up would pop up, just like its namesake. In version A, it says time is running out. It uses the countdown clock to show you how much time is left until the deadline. And then it says only a few days remain to make your tax-deductible gift. Version B, same exact pop-up, same exact timing of when it comes up. It's got the countdown clock, but now it actually uses an incentive on the pop-up. It says your gift before midnight will be matched dollar for dollar. So they're actually taking the incentives off of just the donation page and making sure they're showcased up front in this sort of high urgency timed pop-up. This led to a 56% increase in people clicking through to actually consider making a donation. So this can be an effective tool to capture someone's attention, as well as to position your deadline and any incentives that you might have. So consider using a pop-up for this. But there's also another type of pop-up that you might consider using during the season as well. It's called an exit intent pop-up. So instead of waiting 10 seconds after someone hits your homepage or a page in your site and then showing a pop-up, this actually shows up when you move your mouse or you move your cursor to the corner, or you would typically hit the X or you'd hit the back button, or basically show your browser that I'm ready to move on. An exit intent pop-up comes up when you make that sort of a motion. And here's an experiment showing how this might actually be effective. This organization, CaringBridge, as soon as somebody moved to go close their browser, here's what popped up. Before you go, will you consider something? Most CaringBridge visitors don't realize that each site is kept private, secure, and ad-free because people like you pledge a monthly gift. Since you understand how CaringBridge works and how it keeps people connected, would you consider becoming a CaringBridge partner? This was version A. They also tested a slightly different version of this exit intent pop-up where they leaned into social proof. It has the same core reasons to give, but the call to action changes a little bit. Since you understand how the nonprofit CaringBridge works and how it keeps people connected, would you consider joining 328 fellow supporters and becoming a CaringBridge partner? So now they're inviting them into an exclusive, specific opportunity with a clear ask. This actually led to a 12% increase in donations. So you can use this sort of exit intent pop-up to align your messaging with where someone is at in their experience with you. If they've just been engaging on your website, maybe moving through some meaningful content, either in a blog post or an article or something like that, you can use an exit intent pop-up as a way to say, like, hey, before you go, will you consider doing this one more thing? This might be effective during the season to get someone's attention and show them the impact they can actually have before they leave your website. So I would encourage you to use both a timed pop-up and consider using an exit intent pop-up on your website in order to drive more traffic to your donation page. And then I want to look at something that might be a little bit different for you. I think if there's one of these that's probably brand new to you, it's likely this one, although you've probably been on the receiving end of it before. And it's an in-article ad, or something we typically would call like a Dear Reader ad. And you often will see these on like news publications and news site. Maybe it's like the Wall Street Journal. I know the Guardian uses these things pretty often, where they're ads for giving inside of an article, or maybe it's an ad to sign up for a subscription. That's the most common use case. But we can actually use them on our sites as well as fundraisers and as nonprofits. In version A, this nonprofit, Illinois Policy, they focus on crafting new policy for Illinois. As you would scroll through one of the article pages on their website, they had this little slide out, pop-up slide out little banner that would come out of the side of the screen. It says, get Illinois' top stories delivered to your inbox. You can sign up to subscribe to their newsletter right there in this little slide out. This can be actually a really effective tool for gathering new email subscribers and drawing someone's attention to a call to action. But they wondered, well, what if we actually reposition this? So when you would go through this process, you'd sign up to join the newsletter, and then on the next page, you would be asked for a donation. They wondered, what if we put the donation opportunity inside of the article? So let's ditch the slide out. Let's put the donation opportunity up front, and let's put it inside of the article in this Dear Reader space. And so you can see it doesn't look like a traditional ad, or it's not like some sort of like flashing animation thing. It's not a Google display ad that's injected into the website. It's native to the website. It says, Dear Reader, to make informed decisions, here's the value proposition, some bullet points about why you should give. If you want to see a more prosperous Illinois for your family and friends, please take a minute to help make a difference, support our organization. And by putting this ad in the context of the article that someone was reading, it led to a 695% increase in people saying yes to giving. Instead of having to go through this multi-step process, they put the donation opportunity right up front in the article. This can be an effective way, again, to get someone's attention as they are deeply engaging with you and with content that you might be producing. And some incredible experts at this are actually over at Wikipedia. So if you use Wikipedia at all, basically during the month of December, you're going to see something like this. Last week, I went on their site. I don't know what I looked up. I Googled something random. I found a Wikipedia article, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it's giving season at Wikipedia again. But they do some incredible testing where they're really trying to figure out the motivations of people on their website and how to get them to give during this month of December. So right at the top of their site, it says, if Wikipedia has given you $2.75 worth of knowledge this year, take a minute to donate. Then you can basically say yes or maybe later. It's not yes or no, it's yes or maybe later, which is really interesting. And then if you're actually like on their main page or in an article, you might see something like this. They actually have the donation form right there, but it's a longer form version of that same call to action I just showed you. To all our readers, please don't scroll past this. This Monday, for the first time recently, we humbly ask you to defend Wikipedia's independence. If you donate just $2.75, and it continues to go on. If we've given you $2.75 worth of knowledge, take a minute to donate, and then you can do that right on the page. Wikipedia is doing all sorts of interesting testing around these Dear Reader style ads, as well as some of these on-site pop-ups and banners. So if you need some inspiration this season for copy or different creative ways to position an offer inside of your content, you might just go to Wikipedia. But I would encourage you, as much as you can, to add a Dear Reader ad to your articles, to blog posts, and to if you publish news or anything like that. Add these Dear Reader ads because they can be an effective way to capture someone's attention while they're already sort of leaning into you and engaging with meaningful content. So consider that for this season. And then the slightly more complicated approach, but it could be a really effective approach, is something called a homepage takeover. I would give you a word of caution here because it can be a little bit complicated. You might need a certain level of technical expertise in order to pull this off. And there's a lot of implications if you're taking over your homepage. If you have a lot of traffic that funnels through your homepage in order to access different content throughout your website, maybe make sure to really pause and think about the implications of doing a homepage takeover. But there can be a really significant impact if you can do it well. And I want to show you one example here of a homepage takeover. This organization is actually a Catholic missions organization, Missionary Oblates, and they tested using a homepage takeover. And essentially, instead of just coming to the homepage when you go to their main website, the homepage has now been replaced with this donation appeal. And actually, if you scroll down on the page, I don't have the full screenshot for you, but if you scroll down on the page, the donation form is right here. It's a long form appeal asking you to give during this season. You can see at the top, as we approach the end of 2020, we wanted you to know how you can share the good news in over 60 countries, or if you prefer, click here to continue to Oblate's homepage. So there's still an option to like bypass it and leave it and get to the main homepage. But this is a surefire way to make 100% sure that anyone who hits your homepage sees an opportunity to give. And this, for Oblates, actually led to an 11% increase in donations. Again, with this option of being able to bypass it, if you're not ready to give, you're looking for something else, we can put some of these tools in place to make sure that we're not just harassing someone basically with donation appeals everywhere and no other way to find the content that they want. But it can be particularly effective for a few different channels. It led to a 19.8% increase in giving for mobile traffic, a 16.8% increase for email traffic, and an 18.8% increase for returning visitors to the website. So I would encourage you, if you're able to, test using a homepage takeover during the last couple days of the year, because again, it's going to make sure that anyone coming to your website, and specifically your homepage, sees an opportunity to make an impact on a cause they care about. So there's a bunch of tactics for you related to your website, lots for you to test and try. I don't expect you to put every single one of those into action right now or during the last week, but I'd encourage you to pick one or maybe two if you can to test into and see, can I make it easier for someone to get from my homepage or whatever article they came in on and lead them towards an opportunity to give. Secondly, I want to talk about email for a few minutes, because there's a few emails that I would really encourage you to send during the season and during this last week. And the key concept here is that you want to send personal emails that increase urgency and give people a clear call to action to give. And I'll repeat those one more time. We want to send personal emails from a human being that increase urgency and give a clear call to action to give. Now, we have a whole course on year-end fundraising that walks through this kind of massive timeline. Not that we expect everyone to send 17 emails during the season, but maybe you could. In fact, pretty incredible results. But throughout this timeline, there's different cultivation messages sprinkled in. There's some different direct appeals. It's basically like a 60-40 split of solicitations or like direct appeals versus cultivation. And as we get towards the last week of the year, we're actually going to look at 3 emails to send during the last 2 days. And these are all going to be direct donation appeals. These are going to be most effective if you've been telling your story and communicating your value proposition throughout the course of the season. And then these last 3 emails is what I typically call like a closer type of email, similar to like a closing pitcher. You don't put a closing pitcher in at the start of the game. They're not going to be as effective. They're there to like seal the deal and make sure you win the game. That's what these emails are designed to do as well. They're not going to be effective on December 1st. They're most effective on December 30th and 31st. So there's a bunch more you could send, but we're going to look at these 3. The December 30th email. Here's one example from the Special Olympics. I think this example is really interesting and kind of fun. But this December 30th email is basically going to introduce any last-minute incentives that you may have to give. So if maybe you've had a matching challenge throughout the season, but now your gift can be triple matched. That's a pretty common type of incentive that you might see. Maybe there's a free gift you can get if you give in the last couple of days. Any incentives that you have that are new, you can introduce in this December 30th email. You're trying to reaffirm the deadline. You're trying to increase urgency and give people, again, a very clear option and opportunity to give. But the reason I like looking at this Special Olympics email is because almost every part of this email, almost every word of this email does one of 2 things. So everything I'm highlighting in red for you is trying to increase the sense of urgency. You can see it says midnight tomorrow. You've got this big countdown clock in the middle. It says give now, give now, give now, but only if you give before midnight tomorrow. So all these different things are trying to elevate the sense of urgency that I can't delay my giving anymore. I must give now. And then essentially everything else in this email that I'm highlighting in green for you is adding this additional incentive. Your gift is tripled, triple the support, triple the joy. Your gift will be tripled. The button says triple your gift. 3 times as many athletes get access to healthcare. 3 times as many athletes step off the sidelines. 3 times as many athletes live in a unified world. And then even the call to action URL, it says specialolympics.org/triple-your-gift. So everything in this email is either increasing urgency or it's adding additional incentive that's trying to influence someone to not delay their giving and choose to give now. These aren't brand new reasons why someone should support your organization. It's not explaining the value proposition on any deeper level. The value proposition essentially answers the question of why should I give to you rather than to maybe some other organization, or maybe not at all. We're not spending a ton of time on the value proposition here. We're reminding people of the opportunity to give, we're increasing urgency, and we're adding incentive. One interesting experiment around this concept I want to show you. In version A and version B are very similar emails, except they have a different character count. And essentially, version B, all the things that have been removed from this email are the core like value proposition copy, all the reasons around the specific appeal of the impact that someone can make. Those have been removed from version B. And so all that's left is just this quick reminder style email where it's got a countdown clock. The subject line literally says quick reminder. It's not rehashing reasons to give, it's just reminding you to give before the deadline. And by doing that, during this sort of last minute email, it led to a 30% increase in donations. So at this time of high motivation, high urgency, it's at the end of the campaign, we don't need to rehash our entire value proposition. We need to understand that our donors are busy people just like you and me, and maybe they decided a week ago they wanted to give, but they haven't had a chance to give yet. Maybe they were on their phone when they got your last email and they couldn't get their credit card out and actually like give a gift, but they wanted to give, and they just need a friendly reminder. That's what these closer type of emails are doing, increasing urgency, adding incentive, kindly reminding someone to give before the deadline. Here's a checklist for you as you put this type of email together. Call your donor by name, acknowledge your relationship. Maybe they've just been a subscriber to you. Maybe they've never given. Maybe they've only been a volunteer. They have never actually donated. Acknowledge your relationship, whether they were a donor, a subscriber, a volunteer, or otherwise. Make sure that they know about the deadline, the urgency to give, and when they should give in order to make an impact in the new year. You can announce any new incentives that you have. And then finally, clearly ask them to give. Don't ask them to stand with you. Don't ask them to learn more. Don't ask them to give hope. Ask them to make a donation. One of the best performing emails that we've seen, best performing in this time period, the 30th, 31st window, looks a little bit like this. This is actually version A of an experiment. And version A was sent from the president of the organization. This president of the organization had been the sender of basically every email throughout the season. So every donation appeal had come from the same person. The tone is really formal and really professional, but they wondered, can we improve on this? Can we actually make see an increase in giving if maybe we were a bit more believable and approachable? And so version B, the treatment that they sent and that they tested was actually now sent from a more believable sender. Her name's Christy. She was the director of membership, so a more believable sender. It's hard for us to believe that the president of a major organization is actually sending one-to-one email with the donor. But it might be a more believable relationship if the director of membership emails me. That's easier for me to believe and easier for me to connect with. So they sent from the director of membership. This also represented a new sender in the inbox, so it kind of interrupts continuity. It's something new. Just having something that's new and fresh in the inbox can be a way, an effective strategy to get someone's attention. So now there's a new sender. And on top of that, the whole copy and tone of the email is now friendly, it's informal, and it's incredibly empathetic to donors at this time. So some of the language that's used here is very different than the original. It says, hey, just checking. The subject line literally says checking in. She starts with saying, hey there. It's a friendly, casual greeting. Just wanted to check in and see if you'll be able to contribute. You can make your contribution here. It's a very straightforward call to action. It's not some like big, grand stand with us type of call to action. It's just clear and it's casual. And then ultimately says, all my best, Christy. A casual human conversation. You can see these side by side. Sending this more believable, human, warm, friendly, personal email led to a 136% increase in donations and 103% increase in average gift size. So this is something that you can do too, even just to break from the norm. Send from a more believable person with a warm, human, authentic, and empathetic tone. You might see an incredible increase in giving. So that's for December 30th. But what do we do on the last day? This is like the highest urgency day, probably of the entire year. And that's where the majority of revenue is going to be coming in. This is a critical day. What I want to encourage you to do is essentially send 2 emails, but it's really one communication thread. So here's what I mean. This bottom half of this email you see on your screen, this is what I want you to send in the morning. It's basically a very simple reminder that, hey, the deadline is today. We'd love for you to give. Here's the link to do it. And then at the top, you see another simple reminder. That's what I'm going to encourage you to send in the evening. And it makes it look like an email forward. So we're not sending a totally brand new email with a brand new call to action, a brand new value proposition. We're just sending what looks like a very humanized email communication. Because imagine if you're working on a project and you have a deadline and you're actually working with other people. It's not something you can do entirely on your own. Maybe you're working with a colleague or a friend on something. And it's due on Friday, but today is Tuesday and you're kind of waiting on them to finish up their part of the project. And so what you might do is actually go back into your inbox, into the last time you communicated, and hit forward and send them a quick little check-in that says, hey, I was waiting on you on this, wanted to make sure that you saw it. If you're just waiting on someone, to follow up from a previous email, you're just hitting that forward button. It's going to resend the whole email thread, and that's just how humans behave in the inbox. So we want to try to mimic that in our email fundraising and email marketing. So that's really the goal here. The email you're going to send in the morning can be really simple, like this. It says, just hours left to double your gift. Dear Pam, today's the last chance to double your gift. You help children and families. Please, while there's still time, click here and give. Thanks for remembering those in greatest need. God bless you, Jacinta. And then in the evening, they send this forward that includes the whole thread. It just says, Pam, just wanted to send you a quick note to make sure you receive the email. Didn't want you to miss out on the chance to double your gift. And that's it. This can be an incredibly effective campaign where, again, you're not rehashing all the reasons to give. You're reminding them of the opportunity to give. You've explained your appeal and the impact over the course of the season. Now you're just leaning into reminding them, increasing urgency, and leveraging incentive. We've seen this be quite effective for fundraising, but also in a lot of other contexts as well. In fact, at NextAfter, as we're trying to get more people to sign up for a webinar similar to this one, we'll typically send an invitation, and then the following week, we'll go look at who hasn't signed up and we'll do another invitation to make sure that they saw it. And most resends, you basically say, well, you didn't respond to the first version, so let's try to take a new approach to how we position the appeal or how we position the offer, taking a new approach to the value proposition from a new angle. But we wondered, maybe people just need a reminder. Maybe they saw the first email and just didn't have time to sign up. Or maybe they saw it and they just weren't sure, but now they've had time to think about it. So we sent the same forward style email. We didn't write a brand new one. We just inserted a little note on top of the old one. Hey, I emailed you last week. Noticed you haven't responded yet. Will you be joining us on the webinar next week? Here's the link. And what this led to, you can see the original invite below. This led for us to a 20% increase in people signing up because people just often need to be reminded. It's not that they didn't care about the first time you emailed. It's not that they didn't think it was important. They were probably just busy and they need a little reminder. So here's your checklist for December 31st. Again, call your donor by name, acknowledge the relationship you have, remind them of the deadline, remind them of incentives, clearly ask them to give, and then just send them a quick personal reminder in the evening to make sure that they didn't miss that first email. That's what I'd love for you to do with your emails during this last week of the year. And then finally, where do you send them and how do you improve your donation page? And the key concept here throughout your donation page is we want to emphasize incentives and increase urgency. Very similar to what we were doing through emails. Now it's just going to be continuous onto the donation page. But that's really where I want to focus, is because it's really easy for us to put ads together, and maybe we're sending direct mail and you're sending maybe a postcard and you've got emails going out, you've got banners on your site, you're doing all this stuff to get the word out about the opportunity to give and make an impact. And then too often what happens is we just send all these people to just the regular old donation page, the same one you land on when you just click the donate button at any other point during the year. But what happens when we have these crafted campaigns trying to use unified messaging, and then we send people just to the same old donation page, is this sense of whiplash, where like, I saw this message over here, and now I'm over here on the donation page, and I don't know if I'm even in the right place. You talked about maybe this program or this aspect of your organization, aspect of the impact I can make an impact on, but I don't see that mentioned over here on the donation page, and your donor really starts to wonder, am I giving to the right thing? Am I in the right place? And if there's confusion, maybe anxiety in the mind of a donor on your page, they're most likely not going to give. And if they do, they're probably not going to give as much as they might if they had confidence. So we need to use a different approach, which is making sure to point all of our year-end donation page traffic to a cohesive year-end donation page. And we'll look at 5 different things you can do on this page in order to improve the likelihood of someone giving to you. And a lot of them are actually fairly simple, but really easy for us to miss. Number 1, the headline. Make sure you mention that it's your year-end giving page. That sounds overly simple, but here's what we saw. This original headline says, you can help secure a better future. You may have a headline on your page that sounds somewhat similar to this. Excuse me. The treatment that they tested was changing the headline to make your year-end gift to our organization. Very straightforward, very to the point, but let someone know instantly, if I want to give to year-end, I am in the right place. They're going to get my donation. They're going to get it in time. It's going to go to this goal that I've been hearing about through emails and on the site and all these places. And by just recognizing that, yes, you're in the right place to give a year-end gift, this led to nearly an 11% increase in giving. So just a small tweak to your headline to let people know that they're in the right place can make a meaningful difference. And then you can do the same thing in the body copy, because this can be impactful as well. Version A and version B, pages look similar in terms of layout and design. The headline changes from donation to actually putting some value in there. You can show love and compassion to someone in need, and then it says with a year-end gift to the oblates, and then you keep going down the page, and everything is framed around giving before the end of the year deadline. Version A is just the normal donation page. Version B, the copy has been reoriented around the year-end deadline, and it led to a 12% increase in giving. So you can do this too. It doesn't take rehashing and rewriting your entire value proposition. It just takes some small tweaks to frame it around year-end. And again, small tweaks can sometimes make some of the biggest impacts. But we also want to increase urgency during the season. And one of the simplest ways to do that is with a countdown clock on your page. For this organization, for Caring Bridge, version A has a little bit of copy. It says your gift matters. Here's the donation form. Version B is the same exact page, except they added the countdown clock at the top that's ticking down until the year-end deadline. And just by adding that one countdown clock, it led to a 61% increase in donations. They've let people know that you can't delay your giving. If you want to give into this campaign and make this impact, you have to give now. Don't delay. And I want to look at the impact of these types of countdown clocks over time. This chart is actually showing a fiscal year-end campaign. So similar motivations of urgency where you have to give before a deadline. But it's interesting to see the impact that something like a countdown clock can have over the course of a campaign. Because early on, you see in the sort of the first half, the half of this chart shaded gray, is basically the first like lower urgency portion of the campaign, where you've just kicked things off, you're just getting messaging out, but you're not really close to the deadline. And you can see the orange line on the chart is actually the conversion rate when the countdown clock is on the page. The blue is the conversion rate when the countdown clock is not on the page. And so you can see the lines are kind of like up and down in the beginning of the campaign. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they split, but all in all, the countdown clock isn't really leading to any meaningful increase in giving until you get to the last week. And then once you get to the last week, you see the orange jumps way above the blue line and stays there the whole time. That means the countdown clock is outperforming a page without a countdown clock on it during this period of high urgency. So this week before the deadline is really when people feel the sense of urgency from a countdown clock. And think about it, if you went to a page and you're considering giving and it says, hey, you've got to give before the deadline in 28 days. You're like, I got time, like 28 days, I'll certainly remember to give before 28 days from now. But if it says there's only 3 days left, well, like there's no chance I'm going to remember to come back and actually give you a gift in 3 days, in 3 days time. So I better make my donation now. So these countdown clocks are going to be most effective during this last week towards the end of the campaign. You can also use something like a progress bar to maybe increase urgency somewhat, but also give someone this feeling of, they're part of maybe a movement trying to make an impact, some sort of social proof that others are giving to make this impact in the world. This is a very simple test. Version A of the page had no progress bar. Version B had this bar counting up to the goal, showing the visitor how close they were to hitting the goal. By using this progress bar, it led to a 20% increase in revenue per visitor, which is quite significant. But one thing I would ask you to consider this season is, should you be using maybe a financial goal like this, or should you be using something like a donor goal, a number of donor goal? Because, and we'll look at an experiment around this here in just a moment, but if you see something like a $450,000 goal, and you're at the, especially towards the beginning of that, where maybe only like 10,000 bucks have been given, I can only give maybe 50 bucks or 100 bucks. It's hard for me as like an individual donor to see that my $100 donation is going to really make a meaningful impact on a $450,000 goal. So I wonder if you can use a donor focused goal that really just looks for a total number of donations instead of a total revenue figure to help someone feel like they're making more of an impact. Here's an example. In this experiment, I'll show both on the screen at the same time. This little giving widget popped up during this Caring Bridge giving campaign. And in version A, their goal is based on a financial number. They're saying we're 88% of the way towards the goal. We've received a $100,000 challenge gift. Only if we raise $100,000 before midnight would you help. Version B took a different approach, where every hour they had a number of donations goal. And so on this little widget, it would tell you how many donations are left to hit the goal for the hour. So now if I can only give $100, we'll pretend that's how much I'm giving, and I come to version A, I can give 100 bucks, we're 88% of the goal. That means you still got like, how much is my $100 donation really gonna make an impact? But if I come to version B and I've got $100 to give, I can see I can get us halfway to the goal with my one donation. So I might be that much more motivated to give. And what we saw was a 25% increase in people saying, yes, I want to give, and actually clicking through and considering giving on the next page. So you might test using a donor number goal instead of a financial goal, something to test into and see how it works for you. And then finally, incentives. Both of the pages that you see on your screen, version A and version B, have an opportunity to have your gift matched. Version A and version B both say your support today doubles through a $645,000 matching gift. The difference is that version B also puts this super high contrast sticky bar at the top that says, reminder, a generous donor will match your donation today up to $645,000. There is no way you come to this page and miss that there's a matching opportunity with version B. Your gift is going to be matched in both versions, but version A, it might get lost because there's a lot of copy going on. It's hard to maybe see, especially if you're moving fast and you're skimming, maybe your eye doesn't catch that there's a matching opportunity. Version B, the first thing your eyeball sees is the big orange bar, and you're going to read it and see that my gift can be doubled. And this led to a 44% increase in donations. So just having an incentive isn't enough. You have to ensure that your potential donors know that there is an incentive at stake, that there is a reason for them to give now or maybe give at a higher level in order to have the gift match, get a free gift, etc. So use something like a sticky bar to make sure it's abundantly clear what your incentive is. And I want to give you a few tools that you can use, because we've gone through a bunch of tactics today. But if you walk away from this saying like, those would be super cool, but I have no ability to implement them, that'd be sad, because I haven't really equipped you for success. So here's a few tools that you can consider using in order to implement a lot of these tactics that we've talked about. Number one, if you are wanting to use a sticky bar or different pop-ups on your website, there's three things I would encourage you to consider looking at. Number one is Unbounce. They're typically a landing page builder tool. So you sign up for this tool, you can build beautiful landing pages without needing to know how to write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all that stuff. So you and I, as fundraisers and marketers, we can create beautiful landing pages in Unbounce. But they also have some sticky bars and pop-up tools built in that you can use not just on their landing pages, but across your site as well. So consider that as a tool. There's a tool called Sumo that you can check out, or Sumo Me, you'll find it if you Google that. That's a great tool for adding some of these slide outs and pop-ups and different offers around your page and around your site. And then if you use a WordPress site, search the WordPress library. There's a bunch of free plugins that can do a lot of this stuff for you too. For countdown clocks, if you're trying to insert one into an email, you can use something called Motion Mail app. If you're trying to add countdown clocks and other various style widgets to your website, we typically use a site called power.io. And then again, check out the WordPress library. You can find a bunch of plugins to add countdown clocks as well. And then basically for everything else, if you're trying to add dear readers, or you're trying to do A/B testing on your site, or maybe you change the color of that donate button, or it's hard to do that inside of WordPress or your content management tool, you can actually do it really simply in Google Optimize. It's easy to install and gives you a lot of power to make some customizations on your website without having to be a developer and write some custom CSS. There's a lot of like front-end tools to make some tweaks. So consider using these tools as you're trying to implement these tactics. And then once you get through year end, or you've got all your campaigns set and everything's just ready to go, and then you're kind of just waiting around for like, I hope the revenue comes in, keep your mind occupied and start thinking about 2022. We'd love to serve you and help you as you think about 2022 and get started with fundraising in January. I'd love to equip you as best I can with what we have learned works to grow giving. Through our NextAfter Institute, you can sign up and become a member where you'll get access to 8 on-demand courses. We do monthly members webinars where you can meet with other members, have some peer discussions, get feedback. We do monthly cohort courses, so you can actually work through a certification course with a group of your peers. We have a Slack community where you can share examples, share ideas, get feedback. You can actually start for free. It typically costs $49 a month, but you can get your first month for free. Go to nextafter.com/membership and check that out. And then if you want to go deeper specifically on the last week of the year, basically everything we've talked about is encapsulated in this ebook as well. So if you want a quick PDF to kind of page through and make sure that as you're working on your different tactics and campaigns that you've got everything down, feel free to go to this URL or get your phone out, grab your camera, point it at that QR code. It'll take you to a landing page to download that ebook. So hopefully this was helpful for you. I know we're just going tactic after tactic after tactic, but I hope it's helpful and helps equip you for an even better final week of the year. So thank you so much. It's been a blast. I believe we have a little bit of time for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, Nathan, thank you so much. And as you mentioned, you went over so much material that I think is so important. So I just wanted to assure everyone who's attended that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar, but you will get a link to be able to download Nathan's presentation materials. So if you have any questions now, you can just pop them right into that question box, and we've got a little bit of time to answer some questions if you've got them. If not, that's fine too. All right, well, it looks like there aren't any questions coming in. Nathan, I just wanted to, again, thank you so much for your time today, and everyone that joined us. We really appreciate you jumping in. We know that you are in the thick of fundraising, just trying to get to the year end right now. And we hope what Nathan talked about today can kind of help you execute and, maybe break through some goals that you guys had for this year. And as you start thinking about next year, definitely keep NextAfter in mind and DipJar. And we will be sure to follow up with all the materials from today and how to further engage with both NextAfter and DipJar.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are rooting for you through the whole season. Best of luck. I hope you have your best year end ever.
Absolutely. Thank you all.